What if the behaviors that worry you the most about your baby are actually signs of a highly intelligent brain? The restlessness, the fussiness, the way nothing seems to keep their attention for long, or the opposite, the way they stare at something for what feels like forever. Most parents see these moments and think something isn't quite right. But what if you're not looking at a problem? What if you're looking at a brain working differently? Because here's the truth. Highly intelligent babies don't always look advanced in the way we expect. They don't always talk early. They don't always hit obvious milestones faster. They don't always do the things that make people say, wow. Instead, they often look misunderstood. They are the baby who won't settle easily, even when you've done everything right. The one who seems restless no matter how many toys you try. Or the one who gets bored so quickly that you start wondering if anything will ever hold their attention. And this is where most parents miss it. Not because they're doing anything wrong, but because we've all been taught to look for clear, visible signs of development. Things that are easy to compare, measure, and validate. But developmental psychology shows us something very different. The earliest signs of high cognitive potential are often quiet, subtle behaviors. And most of the time, they look like something you might try to fix. Let's start with the first one, long staring. Most babies look at something briefly and then move on. But some babies lock in, holding their gaze on a face, a light, or a small detail much longer than expected. From the outside, it can look like they're zoning out, but inside the brain, something very different is happening. Researchers call this sustained attention, and it's one of the earliest signs of advanced processing. This is not passive. This is deep analysis. The brain is tracking patterns, comparing details, and building understanding. So if your baby stares intensely, that's not disengagement. That's focus. Now here's where it gets even more surprising. They get bored faster. It sounds counterintuitive, but highly active brains process information quickly. Once something is understood, the brain is ready to move on. This is called rapid habituation, and it's a strong early indicator of cognitive ability. So if your baby seems restless, if no toy keeps their attention, if you feel like nothing is ever enough, it may not be a problem. It may be a brain that has already finished exploring. And then there's something many parents feel, but don't always understand. They respond to tone before words, long before babies understand language. They are already deeply sensitive to emotional signals. Some babies pick up on stress, tension, and subtle changes in energy in a way that feels intense. They don't just hear you, they feel you. And this often gets labeled as too sensitive, but what's really happening is early development of the social brain. Sometimes it looks like a baby who cries more, reacts more, or feels more intensely. But that sensitivity is often the foundation of emotional intelligence later on. So pause for a second. A baby who gets bored quickly is labeled difficult. A baby who reacts strongly is labeled too sensitive. A baby who stares too long is called distant. But what if those are not problems? What if those are signals? Today, we're going to walk through 10 of these behaviors, not to label your baby or create pressure, but to help you understand what might be happening inside their brain, so that you can respond with more clarity and less doubt. Let's start with the first one, long staring. Most babies will briefly look at something, take it in, and then move on as their attention naturally shifts to something else in the environment. But some babies do something different. They lock in, holding their gaze on a face, a light, a pattern, or a small detail for much longer than expected, almost as if they are absorbed in something invisible to us. And from the outside, it can look like nothing is happening, like they are zoning out or disengaged. But inside the brain, something very different is happening. Researchers call this sustained attention, and it is one of the earliest indicators of advanced cognitive processing. This is not passive observation. This is deep analysis. The brain is tracking patterns, comparing details, and building internal models of the world. So if your baby stares intensely at people or objects, That is not disengagement. That is focus. Now, here's where it becomes even more interesting. Behavior number 2. They get bored faster. It sounds counterintuitive because we tend to assume that a more advanced baby would stay engaged longer, would be easier to entertain, and would happily play with the same toy again and again. But in many cases, the opposite is true. A highly active brain processes information quickly, and once something is understood, the brain is already ready to move on. This is called rapid habituation, and it is one of the strongest early predictors of cognitive ability. So, if your baby seems restless, if no toy holds their attention for long, or if you feel like you are constantly trying to keep them engaged, it may not be a problem. It may be a brain that has already finished exploring. And then there is behavior number 3. They respond to tone before words, picking up on emotional signals in a way that often surprises parents. Long before babies understand language, they are already deeply attuned to tone, tension, and emotional shifts in their environment. And some babies show this sensitivity at a much deeper level. They don't just hear you, they feel you. And this often gets labeled as too sensitive, when in reality it reflects early development of the social brain, the systems responsible for understanding people and relationships. Sometimes it looks like a baby who cries more, reacts more, or feels more intensely. But that sensitivity is often the foundation of emotional intelligence later on. So pause for a second. A baby who gets bored quickly is labeled difficult. A baby who reacts strongly is labeled too sensitive. A baby who stares too long is called distant. But what if those are not problems? What if those are signals? If this is already making you see your baby differently, tell me in the comments what behavior you've noticed. Now let's look at the final behaviors, the ones that are most often misunderstood, because they can easily be mistaken for sensitivity, anxiety, or even overstimulation, when in reality, they may reflect a brain that is simply processing more information than average. Behavior number 8, unusual alertness from birth. Some babies, even in the earliest days, are described as having a different kind of presence. Their eyes seem to scan the environment more. They appear more awake, more aware, as if they are already taking in the world at a deeper level. It's not dramatic, it's subtle, but parents often notice it. This kind of alertness is believed to be linked to faster development of the cortex, the part of the brain responsible for attention, awareness, and higher-level processing. In simple terms, the brain is online earlier. Behavior number 9, strong reactions to new environments. New places, new sounds, new people. These can trigger stronger reactions in some babies. And this is often labeled as being too sensitive or easily overwhelmed. But researchers suggest that what's actually happening is a lower sensory threshold, meaning the baby is taking in more information from the environment. They are not necessarily overwhelmed because they are fragile. They may be reacting because they are noticing more. More sounds, more movement, more changes. The brain isn't shutting down, it's absorbing. And finally, behavior number 10. They study people, not just looking at faces, but observing, watching expressions, tracking reactions, following interactions between others. It's a quieter behavior, but a very powerful one. This is linked to the early development of what psychologists call theory of mind, the ability to understand that other people have thoughts, emotions, and intentions. It's the foundation of empathy, communication, and social intelligence, and it often starts much earlier than we expect. Now, here's what really matters. Intelligence in babies does not announce itself. It doesn't come with labels or milestones that clearly stand out. It hides inside behaviors that are easy to overlook or easy to misinterpret. The restless baby, the sensitive baby, the one who won't sleep, who gets bored quickly, who watches everything with quiet intensity. Maybe that baby isn't difficult. Maybe that baby is paying very close attention. And the goal is not to label your child as gifted or to create pressure around performance. The goal is simply to understand, to respond with curiosity instead of concern, and to create an environment where that brain, whatever its pace, can develop safely. Because every baby is different, but every baby is learning constantly, deeply, and in ways we don't always see.